Welcome to Main Street Mavericks, celebrating conversations with exceptional Main Street businesses who serve friends and neighbors in your community. Here's your host, Joel Helfer.
This is Joel Helfer from Main Street Mavericks Radio, and today we have Craig Petronella, CEO of Petronella Technology Group in Raleigh, North Carolina, our number one cybersecurity IT expert who's been on the show before. Hi, Craig. Welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And today we're going to talk a little bit about security awareness training, which is really an important topic on how to protect all your information when you use a computer by doing everyday things that what you wouldn't think would jeopardize your security and your information. Craig, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what security awareness training is and how does the individual or company protect themselves from those nasty guys that are out to steal your information.
Sure. Yeah, security awareness training is a formal process for educating employees about computer security. A good security awareness program should educate the employees about corporate policies and procedures for working with IT. So basically, it's ongoing security training that's typically done by online video. You log into a secure website, and the employees are then, they go through the training, and then they go through a series of exercises to make sure they're absorbing the training properly, and then they're ultimately tested to make sure that they're not clicking on links that could jeopardize the security of the IT network.
So people kind of have a lot of misconceptions that anytime they get a communication or an email from someone, it's perfectly okay and safe. But that really isn't the case, is it? Maybe you can talk about how you have to be careful of what emails or links that you open when you use your computer on a daily basis.
Sure, that's exactly right. So emails are generally, just because you receive an email does not mean that it's safe to open it or to click on it. There's a series of tests that you have to kind of go through to make sure that the email is safe to open, and then there might be links inside the email or attachments, and again, there's some security awareness training that should be not common knowledge, so to speak, to make sure that those elements of the email are safe to click on. So
what should people do if they have a decision, if they get in, because we get bombarded, my God, every day in our inbox. There's literally hundreds and sometimes thousands of emails that are sent to us. And how can we distinguish between what looks like an enticing subject line that you might want to open and a safe email? Is there any way that the average person can do it just by looking at the subject line, or does it have to go much deeper than that?
Yeah, I'll give you some general tips, but you generally, this stuff changes every day and every second of the day. So what you do now might change next second or next week or month. But I'll give you some best practices, so to speak. So obviously, so when you get an email, the first thing most people look at is, well, who did I get the email from? So if I sent you an email, Joel, and you saw that it was from me, then that might be, a trust factor, right? Because we've exchanged emails before, so you know who I am and potentially who that email could be from. So the first thing to check is not only the name of the email, the from address, but the actual email address that's in the from of the email that's to you. So make sure that, because it could say that it's from a certain username, but the actual email address is what's called spoofed or changed to somebody else. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
So that would be tip number one. And then tip number two would be, another element would be if the email contains an attachment, well, what is the attachment and what is the attachment name? If it's named something, a weird name or something, then that might be a red flag. If it's, if you were expecting to get an attachment from somebody, then that would be a trust factor. But if you just randomly got an attachment, then that might be something to be a little bit shy of just diving right in there and opening it. And another trust factor would be, is it a well-known attachment? Is it an Adobe PDF? Is it a Word document? Is it an Excel document? What type of file attachment is it? And then, other things to look for would be, there might be links inside the email to reference other websites or other things. The wording of how the English is used. We've talked on the phone and exchanged many phone calls and emails. So you know the style and the language that I would use. If you suddenly got an email from me with broken English and grammatical errors, that might be and should be a red flag that maybe this isn't really Craig. Maybe there's something else going on here. So all those things I call trust factors or security layers, and you want to make sure that they all kind of line up. And going back to the links in the email, when you look at a link inside of an email, you want to again check the link by hovering over the link and making sure that the destination of the website is actually what the link says. So, for example, if the link is www.google.com, you want to hover over that link and make sure it really is going to www.google.com and not somewhere else. Oftentimes, with emails will contain links inside, but then they go to places that that the recipient doesn't think that they're going to. So, and that's where you can get in trouble. So those are some general quick tips.
Is there anything you can do if this happens to you to report this to some type of organization, authority, the police, whatever, to stop this from happening? Is there any actions you can take? There's a portal website on the FBI website that you can report emails to. There's the Can Spam Act as well. If this stuff comes in through email, that you can forward things to. But ultimately, those are reactive. It's fine to report these things, but it could be too late. Meaning, if you clicked on something and you didn't know, and you now infected the corporate network, you may not instantaneously know that something wrong happened. It may be weeks or months later that the repercussions of that wrong click, so to speak, happen. Wow. Is it just restricted to emails, or could it be restricted, like, for example, people click on different sites all the time, or social media like Facebook or Pinterest or LinkedIn or Twitter, or any of those? Are any of those areas possibly at risk as well? Oh, absolutely. There's a common attack method that what hackers will do is they'll actually buy ads on Google or Facebook or whatever platform, and they'll get the ads approved, and then they'll infect the web server with malware. So the people that go to the website, click on the ad, then they get infected with ransomware or some other type of malware that gets into the computer, like we talked about before. Keystroke keyloggers could get onto the computer without their knowledge, ransomware, viruses, etc. Is there any way to protect against that, or is it just a matter of bad luck if you click on one of those? Yeah, there is actually. So there's several different things that can be done. So the security awareness training is the one thing. That's one security layer, right? Then there's new technology called next generation antivirus that uses much better technology to protect you against those malicious software links that you could click on. I don't know if you know this, Joel, but typical antivirus software is the latest statistic from Gartner reports that it only protects you against 35% of the threats out there. Wow, that's a small percentage. So if you think about that, that's a really small percentage. You're exposed to 65% or more of the threats that are out there. And the reason for that is antivirus is based on 20-year-old technology. It's a reactive solution. It's a reactive security layer that only knows how to protect you against what it knows about. And what that means is
these viruses and malware and malicious software that comes out at such a rapid clip that the antivirus companies are struggling to keep up with inoculation details that they put into what's called a signature or pattern file. So typically, when you buy antivirus, you buy a subscription service from that company, and then you trust that company is then updating that software signature or pattern file as often as possible to protect you. Well, it's a never-ending battle. So what I'm saying is that is no longer effective. It's only 35% effective. So now there's new next-generation antivirus technology that protects against 99.6% of the latest threats, including ransomware, malware, and it's just much more sophisticated with heuristics and artificial intelligence technology. But the problem is that – Go ahead. I was just going to say the problem is that the next-generation antivirus solutions and anti-malware solutions, they were typically only available to corporations that are 5,000 employees or greater.
I was going to say, where could you get a hold of some of this stuff? So that really reduces the amount of people who can use it, because that's pretty hard hoop to jump over, hurdle to jump over. Most people are not part of a organization anywhere near that size.
That's exactly right. So what we have done is we have created a joint partnership and have been successfully able to deliver that quality of next generation software to our clients now. So we can help these smaller businesses, of just a handful of employees all the way up to larger corporations.
Oh, that's great. And do you have a name for it? Is there a special name for this type of software? Have you dubbed it or anything like that?
Yeah, the product name is called Sentinel-1, but our company, my company, Petronella Technology Group, has created that partnership with them to be able to offer their software as a security layer in addition to our security and proprietary layers, to the smaller business as well as to the enterprise business. So we were able to forge that partnership with them and give the small business the larger companies power to protect themselves.
Is it a long process to install?
No, we do all that. We specialize in all that. It's very quick to install and get configured, and we've had great success with it. And we also provide reporting to the users so they understand what risks we protected them against for the month, so that they can see that it's actually working.
That's really amazing, and this protects them against just about any and every type of attack you can think of.
Yep, pretty much. It's one layer of the security puzzle. There's no one silver bullet, including this one. I don't recommend that this is the cure-all for anything, but it is one important security layer that I found to be very, very effective at protecting yourself. So combining the next generation antivirus layer with security awareness training and good data backup, disaster recovery, and blending them all with multiple layers, just like an onion. The more layers, the better. The lower risk your business is for a breach.
When an owner or a CEO or a manager of a company thinks about security awareness training, how much time do they have to allow to actually train their employees?
Typically, onboarding for security awareness training is pretty quick. The problem with it is that it's a habit, right? So you got to get the employees to actually do the training. So there's the first step is buying and purchasing and investing in the training, and then the next step is getting the employees to actually go through it. It's not so bad though. A lot of my clients will blend it into their handbook and make it a requirement because it's so important that they have, and the people or the employees that successfully complete the training may be more apt to get a raise or get, some kudos for doing good for the company, because like I said before, one wrong click, one employee that doesn't properly go through the training and clicks on the wrong thing, or even answers the telephone and gets they're at risk at social engineering or some of these other attacks that are happening. They put the whole company at risk.
I know, and they've actually been publicizing on both television and the radio what you were talking about the other day about companies being held up where literally all of their information is now being held and they have to pay a ransom to get it back.
Yeah, that's called ransomware. That's really the number one reason why a business should have security awareness training. It's because of the ransomware epidemic that's going on right now. Because your employees have to understand the mechanisms of spam and phishing and spear phishing and malware and social engineering and what all this stuff is in order to mitigate the risk of ransomware. And ultimately, if a business is infected with ransomware, they need to, now their security layers are tested, right? So how did it get in? Did it get in through email or a bad link? Did it get past the typical 20-year-old antivirus that most corporations use? And that's how it usually gets into the network. And then now what it does is it tests their data backup disaster recovery technology. And if they didn't have proper data backup disaster recovery and business continuity, and all three elements are required nowadays, if they didn't have that in place and it's not strong, they may not be able to recover. And that's really the sad part about it, is because a lot, I think it was Ben Franklin that said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Right.
So, that's so true, because I've heard of stories. The latest one, just last week, the company got completely shut down. Downtime goes through the roof. People can't work. They can't get into their computers and systems. And the ransom was, I think, $300,000.
Wow.
So what I mean by that, going back to that data backup disaster recovery and business continuity, if a business gets ransomware and they get shut down and their employees can't work, the bigger the corporation, the bigger the problem, right? So if you've got 10 employees that can't work and they're on payroll, well, that's pretty painful for a small business. But what if you have 100 or 1,000 or more? Now you've got costs that are going through the roof of all these salaries that people are getting paid and they can't do their job. So now what happens? It goes down to, well, what are our options? We could pay the ransom, which I don't advise typically doing if you can get out of it. But some companies, you have no choice. So that's one option, right? Pay the ransom. And by the way, there's no guarantee that you'll actually get the data back. Option number two is recover. So how do you recover? You use your data backup recovery system. Well, if you just had cheap data backup and it was, file only, or God forbid you use something like Dropbox as quote unquote backup, well, guess what? The ransomware can go after those files too and infect and encrypt them. So you can't recover. So oftentimes what happens is, like I said before, the data backup is strategy and solution that you're using is now tested. So oftentimes people fail to test, and once they find out that they can't recover, well, now they have to go back to option number one, and maybe that's the only option that they have, is to pay to recover. So it's a test of your security to, if you have good, strong data backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity, well, then you can choose that option number two and actually pull the trigger on recovery, and your downtime window will be only as bad as your last backup point, which sometimes could be just minutes. So maybe you just lose a few minutes worth of data. It just depends on the technology that you have in place and the security.
And what happens if you're working with a company who that you do business with and they're infected? Can the fact that they're infected be translated into your business as well?
Absolutely. That's exactly how Target got hacked, by the way. So that what happened with Target was their HVAC vendor got hacked. They didn't know it. And what happened was zero-day malware got onto and through that channel onto Target's machine. And then it lurked there, collecting information, usernames, passwords, everything that people were typing in. It was collecting for almost 2 years before Target was able to remediate the risk. So that's what I'm saying. That all of this is about security layers, and the more layers you could afford to put in place, the lower your risk becomes.
You mean they could collect information for that long of a period of time before they actually attempt to use it against
That's
you?
exactly right, and that's exactly right. And you don't know it. So if you click on a bad link inside an email or a bad attachment, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see the result of that click right away. It's not the typical cause and effect, right? It could be you clicked on a link, a PDF, for example, and the PDF opened up and it looked fine. But if there was something malicious happening behind the scenes, then you may not know it instantaneously. It might be months later before something happened. And then you can't, what makes it more difficult with these latest threats is you can't tie the two together. It's almost impossible for you to figure out that employee A clicked on this bad email X days ago to cause this breach now. You see what I'm saying? It's not not that it happened right now in this moment. Well, now you know, okay, well, that email is what got me infected. So that's what I'm saying, that the next generation antivirus and the training and all these security layers are so important.
Is there anything else that, in addition to social engineering and the security awareness training, is there any other parts and pieces and better ransomware software? Is there anything else that companies should do in order to, like you say, what other parts of the onion should they be aware of in order to have a whole package?
Yeah, I have an infographic I created called 9 Ways to Prevent a Ransomware Attack, and I give it away to anyone that just calls me or emails me. So that could be something that I'm happy to give out. It basically has some information there, essentially check boxes of different things that they should have in place. And if you can't check the box and have a good solution for it, then you should really seriously consider investing in one. So maybe you don't have really good data backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity, for example. And we offer a free assessment to analyze that. The same thing for the antivirus. We have an antivirus audit that we do now, where we check the antivirus that you're using and make sure that it's achieving the goals and giving you the protection that your business needs. And if not, we can make recommendations for how to put better layers of security in place.
And you do this not only for national companies but international companies, is that right? That's
right, yeah. And currently the antivirus audit, that's limited right now to the first 7 people that contact me, so I have a special on that right now. Normally we charge $900 for that.
Oh, and how do they get a hold of you, Craig, if they want to take advantage of your free infographic and your special? How do they actually get a hold of you?
They can call us toll-free at 1-877-468-2721, or they could just go to our website at petronellacomputer.com.
Wow, this is fantastic. So for the audience listening to this who now maybe think twice before they open up any emails, what's the big takeaway from today's conversation? What's the one thing that you really have to think about in order to protect your information and your company and your computer?
Well, the big takeaway is really all about there not being a silver bullet here. It's all about layers. So starting with security awareness training, protect all your users or your employees, make sure that they understand what these threats are and how to mitigate the risks of them. And it's not just email either. It could be links on the internet. It could be ads that people click on. It could be social engineering. They get a call from somebody. There's a scam going on now where all they say is, "Can you hear me?" And they record you saying yes. And then they take that recording of you saying yes, and then they use that against you to potentially steal your identity and sign you up for things that you didn't want. So there's all sorts of scams going on out there. that are not just with email, but social engineering, people calling and trying to extract information from you that would be useful to a criminal. That information could be information about your IT. It could be information about you. It could be information about a certain employee or a system at the company. There's all sorts of reasons that people could be trying to get that information. And then there's also what's called CEO fraud that's going on, or wire fraud. This has happened for years now, but what's happening more commonly, and this is typically done through email or social engineering, is a impersonation of a well-known vendor that the business may typically wire funds to. They get it. An attack happens where the target company is asked to wire a certain amount of funds to the hackers in this case, and typically the C-levels fall for it because they're not properly trained with security awareness training, and they don't go through the hoops because they were a trusted vendor. So that, when in doubt, I always say pick up the phone and when in doubt, if I get an email from Joel and it says wire him $100,000, and we didn't have a previous conversation about that, well, number one, that's going to be a red flag for me because I never agreed to anything about $100,000. And then number two, I'm not just going to go to my bank and wire the information. I'm going to pick up the phone and call Joel and say, well, what is this about? And then, then that might be a trigger for Joel to think, oh, well, maybe I got hacked. I didn't send you that email, but it looks like it just came from you. You know what I mean? So that's where a lot of this stuff, can be avoided if people are so busy now, they don't want to make phone calls and double check on certain things, especially with vendors that they're used to doing business with. There's some companies that they wire funds all the time. So especially to trusted vendors. So if an extra email came in and it was in the metrics of what typically happens for that business, well, then it wouldn't throw up a red flag. If a business is typically wiring $5,000, $10,000 to a vendor that they typically would do that with on a regular basis, well, if they got hit with one of these scams, well, it wouldn't be that hard, and it wouldn't be that out of the ordinary for the company to wire funds to the target company.
And then they take those funds and they move them around so you can never track them. Is that correct?
Yeah, once the funds are there, they're pretty much gone. I mean, you can report it to the FBI, which is, I always recommend doing that because a lot of people don't know that, but it is the law. You are supposed to report it. Even if you get infected with virus or malware, you're supposed to report it. So there should be a report filled out on the FBI website at a minimum. But yeah, most of the time, if you've gone through that, it's near impossible to recover the funds back.
Well, it seems to me like any prudent individual or business should definitely get a hold of Craig Petronella at Petronella Computer Technologies in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're not even talking about fun here. This is for business survival.
Yeah, it really is. It's to ensure that you're in business next year, ultimately. If you don't do these things and you don't have these new minimum requirements in place for your business, then, time's are ticking. If you don't put these things in place, this will happen. It's not just a matter of, it's not going to happen to you kind of thing. It will happen. It's happening every day. I mean, just look at the headlines on the news.
Well, I appreciate your time, Craig. Thank you very much for giving us something really important to think about. This isn't your everyday conversation, and I know the audience listening to this appreciates this very much. And don't hesitate to call Craig Petronella because he can make your life a lot better and make it possible for you to bring home that paycheck every Friday night, which is extremely important for you and your family. Craig, thank you very much for being on Main Street Mavericks Radio. We appreciate and we wish you continued good health and success. Thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. And just have anybody call me if they want any of those resources that I offered, the infographic.
Okay, repeat your phone number one more time.
It's toll-free, 1-877-468-2721.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been another episode of Main Street Mavericks Radio. Have a little fun today. Don't save it up.
You've been listening to Main Street Mavericks Radio with Joel Helfer. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit mainstreetmavericks.com.